Hi guys, I'm the owner at Olympia. My name's Isaac. Today we're going to be looking at some DIY CraftyPanda bicycle mechanic videos. These channels come up with projects that you can do at home with like repurposed, recycled materials and things like that. Essentially, the idea of these videos is that you can save money by doing these things without having to go out and actually buy them. I'm going to struggle through it. I'm going to try not to say anything. And then we're gonna rewind, go through the video, and analyze every tip in detail to figure out like what the heck is going on here. So yeah, let's go. So this video was actually slowed down 25%. So in the first frame, we saw someone putting what looked like lipstick kind of thing with wax. What looks like wax, with no context, by the way. So foam pedals and foam grips, and then they just roll off. So the bell wasn't staying on properly here. So they're cutting up the tube, putting it back on the bar, and using the tube to take up that gap between the diameter of the bell and the bar, which is good. That's an actual trick we do, by the way. Okay, so using pliers to close up the chain, which is a terrible idea, and it just cuts away. So yeah, most of these videos, they just cut, you know, there's no commentary whatsoever, so where are the tips? So this person just installed a mirror on the bar, and they roll away, and nothing happens. Where's the tip? Install a mirror on your bike? So this person's using a chain cleaning tool on their chain, clean their chain, and that's it. Is that the end of it? Okay, so this person is using this sort of a rubber band thing to hook up a flashlight to their bar. It's a regular flashlight. That thing looks so loose, like stick an alarm on your bike. I have seen tens of thousands of bikes in my life. I've never seen one with an alarm. No one does that. Okay, so someone's laying out PVC on the ground. It's all pre-cut. Yet again, no commentary. It looks like a bike rack. Okay, so it is a bike rack. And she's spinning the pedals and leaving. Okay, so it's the same bike, same person, with a bungee cord. So she's passing the bungee cord through the eyelets on the backpack and using it to hook up her backpack to the rear rack of the bike and rolling away. Okay, so there are so many issues with this. We're going to take it back and look at everything individually. Okay, so this person here is using what looks like a wax stick and destroying the wax stick, is what you can see here. She's completely just destroying it. But also there's no commentary. So you don't even know if they're actually putting wax on, what wax they're putting on their bike, whether it's a bike-specific wax. There's none of that here. Like someone who has no idea what they're doing might see lipstick here and have no idea and just stick lipstick onto their bike. So yeah, that's what I think about this particular segment here. So let's keep going. Okay, so this one here is really funny. So they replace pedals with foam ones for some reason. From an entertainment perspective, this is amazing. Like, yeah, I have nothing to say about this particular tip aside from what the heck, because it doesn't mean anything to me. I'm a bicycle mechanic. I have no idea what this does. From what I know, I mean, it kind of looks like a dummy pedal. So a dummy pedal is what you use. Park Tool makes one, and I think a few other companies do. A dummy pedal is what you use when the bike you're working on that's on a stand that you're actually fixing up doesn't have pedals installed. So what a dummy pedal will do is that you'll install a pedal onto either the drive side or the non-drive side of the bike. Usually it's a drive side because that's the part you're adjusting. That's the side where the derailleurs are. So you'll stick a dummy pedal inside the drive side crank arm and then use it to rotate the pedals instead of your finger directly on the crank. This is especially useful when you're working on, for example, fixed gear bikes where your finger can actually get stuck between the chain and the chainring as it spins. So yeah, that makes me think of a dummy pedal, but I mean, they put it on both sides and they're doing it to the bars too. Why would you do that? Why would you do that to your grips? And they walk away with it. So I don't really understand what this is. Second thing about this particular segment that I really find funny is the track slack that they have. Yeah, that chain is so loose it's about to fall right off. Like, please, for the love of God, stop putting foam on your bike and start fixing your freaking chain. Like, come on, man. Priorities. Where are the priorities? This one here is actually interesting because it's a real thing that we do. So like I said earlier, some of these crafty DIY videos actually like give us some really interesting information once in a while, and this is one of them. Handlebar diameters come in plenty of different widths, and this particular one here, it looks like the bell just doesn't really fit right on the handlebar even when it's tightened fully. So in order to fill up that gap, that person is cutting up an inner tube that's ideally a broken one. If you're using a new freaking inner tube for this, that's ridiculous. Hopefully they didn't do this for that video. But yeah, so you would cut up an inner tube, stick it between the gap between the clamp and the bar that would fill up the gap and make it so that the bell would actually stay there in place secure. Sometimes I do get customers that look at us as we're doing it and go, are you sure that works? But yeah, it's an actual thing. The one thing I would comment on for this particular part of the video here is how ugly the job is. Like, if you're gonna cut up a tube, might as well cut it the same width as the accessory clamp you're gonna put it under, right? Yeah, no, please just cut it up the right size so that it looks clean and that you can see the bar on either side of the bell. It just looks much better that way. So yeah, it is a real trick, but do it nicely and cut it. It should have been cut much thinner than it was for the video. So that's the only thing I'm going to say about that. Maybe they did this in order to film the video so that the angle would be proper, but I mean, that bell is so far away from the grip, I don't understand how it could even be used if it's even on the right side. I think the striker of the bell is here on the left. So ideally what you want to do is flip that bell over so that the striker is at least up in front so that you can use your index finger and actuate the bell. Right now there's no way to do it unless you completely stretch over your hand and use the bell. What kind of grip is that? See, so yeah, like there's so many what the F things in this video that I have a hard time processing it. This next part here shows a chainstay on the drive side of the bike right next to that chain that's so freaking loose. Please
tighten up the chain.
These people they really need someone who has an idea of what they're doing. This is the drive side chainstay of the bike. Person is pointing at the chainstay going, what's like trying to show off the chainstay. And that barrel adjuster is so out. This barrel adjuster here really needs to be fixed. And they're applying a Shimano Pro chainstay protector. They're applying an actual product. So how is this a tip? How is it a tip if your tip is the use of a product that does what it's meant to do? I don't get it. Like, it's not I don't think it's a tip. I think it's just like, it's neither a how-to video or a tip video. It's just someone doing things. I guess is what I would call it. A chainstay protector is meant to protect your frame from something called chain slap. If you have a chain as loose as the person's bike on the video, or you have a rear derailleur, for example, your chain will do something called chain slap. So it's gonna wiggle up and down, and sometimes it'll hit your chainstay. So it'll actually hit your frame. In order to combat that and to avoid breakage of and damage of the frame, for example, what we do is we install things called chainstay protectors, and all they do, it's a thick sticker. Sometimes it has this carbon fiber texture, and we install it onto the bike, and it just prevents the frame from being damaged. But none of that was explained in this video here, so if you have no idea what a chainstay protector is, you'll just think it's a sticker, which it is, but it's a special kind of sticker that does a specific job. Okay, so this part here is great. So we first see someone holding a round tool called a spoke wrench. We have plenty of these in the shop, especially if you're doing wheel building, you'll see them a lot. Basically, it's a wrench meant to tighten the nipples that tighten your spokes. For those who don't know, nipples they're basically a nut meant to screw onto a spoke through your rim. Wheels have to be under tension in order to work properly, and they're meant to keep your wheels straight. So if you adjust the spokes, just like you would guitar strings, for example, you can straighten a wheel. So this person just goes for the first spoke they see, for some reason, tightens it up, and then tries to wiggle it, I would assume to show that the spoke isn't loose anymore. Never do this, ever. Unless you see one spoke that's kind of so loose that it's a problem, and you can tighten it up a bit just to get to the nearest bike shop, never do this. Like, there is literally no reason for you to mess with your spokes unless your wheels are either out of true and you know how to fix them up, or unless you have a really loose spoke and you just want to get to the nearest shop to get it fixed. Otherwise, if you actually want to tighten a wheel and make it straight, I mean, there are so many other ways to do this than just go for the first spoke. There is no reason to do what they're showing in this video. And also, the lack of commentary in this video also shows that they don't explain why you would ever tighten a spoke. So they don't even show that the wheel is straighter afterwards. So that's what I mean when I say that this video lacks a lot of context. It's super important to know why you're tightening and loosening spokes, because you're probably going to ruin your wheels if you do it improperly or in excess. These sorts of videos are exactly the kind of thing that makes your bicycle repair bill go higher. Okay, so this one here is interesting because people think that you can actually do this. I'm just gonna rerun this quickly. Okay, did you see that? They cut the frame right to where the pin was installed. So chains are made up of rivets, and those rivets can be pushed out in order to open up the chain, shorten it, elongate it, and close it up again. Simply put, that's how those rivets work. That's how chain pins work, basically. You can see the pin of the chain stick outwards at the beginning of that little part there, and the person is holding pliers up to the pin and trying to squeeze the pin back into the link. One, never do that. Even if you succeed, the pin will not go in straight, and you risk bending one of the links in your chain. And even if it looks like the chain is fixed and you put it back on your bike, there's a high probability of that chain snapping in half because the pin hasn't gone through properly from one end to the other. The second reason why you should never do this is obviously you're going to damage the exterior of your chain, and if you damage the outside of your chain, it won't work as well. If you're going to fix a chain, buy a chain breaker. It's like 15 bucks at the most, or you can buy a multi-tool that'll do the same thing for about 25 bucks, and yeah, it'll fix your chain, and it'll do more things. It'll have a screwdriver on it, and it'll actually fix your chain as opposed to damage it more. So do that. Okay, this one part is super interesting because it lacks so much context that it's literally just someone installing a mirror onto a bike. So there's not much I can say about this part because it is actually just someone properly installing a mirror onto a bike. It's how we do it in the shop, and it's how anyone who buys that kind of a mirror will do it. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, but there's nothing really good about it either. It just is what it is. Okay, so this one here is actually quite funny. The person wipes their finger across the chain, and there's oil on the finger, and they kind of like make it seem like that's a problem. It's not really a problem. Bicycle chains, if you don't have oil like that on your finger, I mean, yes, chains can get grimy, and when they're excessively dirty, you gotta clean them. In this scenario, the person sees that the chain is dirty on the outside, wipes their finger on it, goes, huh, okay, I'm gonna clean it, uses a chain cleaning tool with soap. I would assume dish soap because that's the most common, that's a common home remedy for a dirty chain, but doesn't put oil back on it. If you pass your finger on a chain and you have nothing on your finger, like you have no oil whatsoever, that's a problem. You actually need to have an oily chain because that's the whole point of oiling the chain in the first place. Bicycle transmissions are a bunch of metal parts that rub together just like pistons inside of a car's engine or any kind of engine. So you have metal parts rubbing with each other, and in order to offset erosion from that and damage, we oil things so that when they rub against each other, they have a film of oil protecting them and lubricating them in the process. So having an oily chain is actually good. Having a dirty chain is bad, but it's not as bad as having a completely dry chain, which this one is. Those metal parts will be rubbing directly on each other. So yeah, no, not a great tip. Not a great tip. This one here is literally just a rack that holds onto your pedal that you screw into the wall. How is that even a tip? This light one is just stupid. It's literally the loosest rubber band with a Dollarama light that you will barely see anything with, and it's so loose that the second you get a bump, the light will either fall off or tilt down so that you can't see anything. So yeah, terrible tip. The bike alarm, I've seen those around. We don't sell any. I think that the problem with that is that thieves don't always necessarily notice the thing. Yeah, I'm kind of skeptical about how that would stop theft, aside from the fact that you can just rip it off because it's plastic. So that particular, if you're having a really expensive bike and the thief knows that the bike is super expensive, and they see the alarm because it has an actual alarm symbol on it, like this one does, I mean, if I was a thief, I'd just rip that off because it's plastic. Another thing is that those things are so ugly. Who would want that on an expensive bike? Okay, so this one here is about someone who magically finds perfectly cut to spec PVC tubing, or they spent like an hour and a half trying to design this thing around this PVC idea, which renders the idea completely useless because you can just go out and buy the same thing out of metal for like 15 bucks. So that's a terrible idea as well. And it's flimsy. It's so flimsy. Like, don't do that. Your bike's gonna fall off, and if it falls off, you're gonna bend your derailleur hanger, and that's way more expensive than that rack that you saved money on. There's no point in that. Yeah, these tips are ridiculous. And look at that chain slack. Yeah, no. I don't know who the target audience is for this particular kind of video, but this this sort of video is just a snake nest of terrible ideas that sometimes customers will find as they scavenge the internet, and they'll come to us with these sorts of videos and ideas sometimes and go, oh, can I do this? And in the shop, it's not that we don't like people like doing projects and building things themselves. I build things for myself all the time. But this, if it doesn't save you any time and it looks terrible, don't do it. It's that simple, especially if it can potentially either hurt you or break the bike. This one rack idea is terrible. When you're installing anything on a bike, especially if you're doing it around the hubs and the wheels, what you want to do is avoid anything going inside the frame, especially if it's string or a tube or anything like that, a bungee cord, because what can happen is that if that thing breaks, it'll actually wrap around your hub as it spins, and it'll either lock your hub, or worst case scenario, it'll fall on the drive side, fall off on the drive side and get caught inside the transmission, and it'll break everything in its path. Like the chain it'll get caught in the chain, caught in the cassette, the derailleur, and it can be horrendous. It can break spokes, it can actually break the derailleur hanger, it can warp your chain. So you want to avoid anything that you'll hang on the inside of the frame. You can hang anything from the outside of the frame in. That's okay, as long as it doesn't get close to the hub or anything that's spinning. So ideally, anything that spins has to be free of any obstacle whatsoever. See that? So this person here passes the bungee cord right on the inside of the frame, right next to the hub. What might end up happening is that the bungee cord can be right on the inside of the frame, and the hub can be spinning and spinning and spinning, and it'll actually slowly cut into the fibers of the bungee cord until eventually the bungee cord snaps in half, and you end up with an issue like what I just described, where everything wraps up inside your bike and you need to go to the nearest bike shop. It'll actually lock up your wheel too if you do that, so you won't be able to ride the bike to the bike shop. That's how bad that is. The second thing that's wrong with this tip is that this person is passing the bungee cord through all the eyelets of the backpack that's there, but this only works with that particular backpack. It's like not all backpacks have eyelets in these particular locations in order to do this thing. So if I was going to rate this on a 10, I would say 0, because it doesn't apply to anyone beside the person owning this backpack. And it's dangerous because the bungee cord can break and break your bike. So yeah, there's no point in doing this, and if you tried this, I wish you luck. That sums it up for my review of these weird tips. Like I said, if you ever see anything on the internet that you're not really sure about, that seems a little bit too good to be true, or that it's so simple that you have to try it out, I would recommend do a little bit of research on it to make sure, and just take everything you see on these weird DIY channels with a grain of salt, because I mean, although some of these ideas are okay, like the bell one that we do all the time, 90% of them were not good, and some of them were actually dangerous and could potentially break your bike. So yeah, don't do these. If you ever want to do something to your bike, just ring up the bike shop. I'm pretty sure that most local bike shops will be more than happy to help you out and avoid that extra work that your broken bike might give them. So cheers, and see you next time. I'm so confused as to what this means. What does this mean? What am I supposed to do with this information?